How does dyslexia look like? Advantages and disadvantages. Some people see dyslexia as a disability, others as a gift. I think both are correct, and we can understand dyslexia better if we look at both the weaknesses and the strengths of the individuals. But before we move on, I would like to clarify some things regarding the terminology. So I use the word dyslexia as an umbrella term, which contains other disorders that start with dys. All these are the result of how things are being processed in the brains of the individuals. Some also have dyscalculia, some don't. Some are more affected than others. And dyslexia refers to difficulties with reading. Dysgraphia refers to difficulties with writing. Dyscalculia means difficulties with math calculations. Dyspraxia is difficulty with muscle coordination, and it can also affect language production. Some general concepts. Dyslexia is a neurological condition. That means that the brain circuit is different in dyslexics. Dyslexia is in the genes. Dyslexic individuals have normal or above average IQ. Dyslexia is frequent, about 1 person out of 10 has it. Dyslexics don't have vision or hearing problems, nor do they see letters and numbers backwards. The brain has 2 hemispheres, the left and the right. For some activities, we use the left side of the brain, and for others, we use the right side. Dyslexics rely mostly on the right and too little on the left. The left side is responsible for the language, reading and writing, details, sequencing. The right side is responsible for the overall view and creativity. I will now go over the symptoms and in particular the disadvantages part. One early sign can be speech delay. There can be articulation problems, especially with the RLM. They can make substitutions in speech, such as bisgetti instead of spaghetti, exclamation instead of explanation, or words that have similar sounds. But they can also make conceptual substitutions, such as thunder instead of lightning, volcano instead of tsunami, armchair instead of sofa. Sometimes they search for the words and often use, what's it called again? Oh, this thingy or that stuff. They are usually bad at rhyming words when they are little. And many are late in establishing a dominant hand. And even then, some use right hand for some activities and left for other activities. Some dyslexics may have directional confusion, which manifests by left-right confusion, up-down, difficulties reading the map. Many dyslexic adults can get lost even in a city they are familiar with. For the same reason, they can confuse B with D, P with Q, N with U, M with W. We can still identify, so if you look at the picture, you'll see that chair as being still a chair, even though it is turned in different directions. However, the direction matters when it comes to letters. Some may mirror write the letters when they write. Other things that are common are difficulties with sequencing, slower in learning the alphabet, the days of the week in order, the months of the year in order, time sequencing such as yesterday, tomorrow, last year, next year, hard time learning the timetables, difficulties memorizing anything that has no logic, like phone numbers, locks, names of places, etc. They get lost when given multiple instructions. For example, open the blue book at page 45, paragraph 15, and underline the adjectives with red. They are usually good in more complex math, but can have great difficulties doing basic calculations and where they have to do things involving multiple steps. They have a hard time learning how to tie their shoelaces. They have poor memory for some things, but many have excellent memory for episodes from their lives. They can be the family historians. The most common characteristic of dyslexics is their weak phonemic awareness, which translates into difficulties decoding words. What does that mean? You might ask a child, what word do these sounds make? W, a, t, And the child may answer something like weather or winner. They just can't hear the sounds or string them together. Words are made up of phonemes, sounds, which blended together make up the word. When reading, our brain quickly connects the letter or the written symbol to a sound, then strings the sounds together. Dyslexics have a very hard time doing this and doing it fast enough. For non-dyslexics, the process becomes automatic, like walking. For dyslexics, this may never become automatic and it requires great effort. The dyslexic person, when reading, uses mostly the right side of the brain, and decoding happens in the left. So, what does the right side do? It photographs the form or the shape of the word, and the child tries to memorize the word by its form. If the child doesn't work out sound by sound, he or she will start to guess the word, and that will lead to inaccurate reading and lots of mistakes, particularly with short, similar-looking words like this, then, there, where, how, who, short, shirt, etc. Sometimes longer words are easier for them to guess because of the context. In grade 1, for example, the photos in the book are of great help, so you may not notice that they are falling behind. You think that they are reading, when in fact they may be getting the meaning from the pictures. That is why they might read a word well on one page and not recognize it on the next page. The first time the context may have been clearer and the child figured it out, but the second time he or she couldn't. The same tendency towards a photographic view of the words as opposed to decoding is responsible for the most common spelling mistakes and reversals, like on instead of no, mist instead of mitts, herat instead of heart, etc. Writing can be horrible, full of spelling mistakes, often without punctuation. The letters are either too big or too little. The space between letters is either too big or the letters overlap. It is hard for the writing to sit on the lines. One word can be tilted to the left, another one to the right. The descendants from J, G, P may or may not go below the line. This problem with writing is called dysgraphia, and some dyslexics have it as well. I think it is often included in the package. Another very laborious thing is taking notes and copying from the board. Their head goes back and forth from the board to the notebook, and it generally takes them more time than non-dyslexics and most often there will be lots of mistakes. Often they have issues with executive functioning. For example, they forget where they leave their things, their mind wanders easily, and they lose track of time. It is hard for them to organize things around them as well as time. They are bad at putting things on paper, and they perform much better if they are evaluated orally. Or they may have great ideas, but they know they can't spell complex sentences, so they end up writing short telegraphic sentences. Yet, when they speak, they express themselves in complex structures with great vocabulary. They also have issues with grammar and syntax. It is also almost impossible for them to master a foreign language at a written level. They can do it if teaching is based on oral instruction. A lot of them have attention deficit and can't focus for extended periods of time. Homework takes a lot of time for them. Now I would like to move on to the advantages, and this graphic has them listed. Are you familiar with the saying, "You can't see the forest because of the trees"? Well, dyslexics are exactly the opposite. They see the forest, but they cannot see the trees. This characteristic is the root of both the disability as well as the advantages. This is precisely why they stumble across reading and writing, because the letters, numbers, and sounds are the trees, which pretty much all look the same. But they see the final product. They see the forest in its splendor. And not only do they see it, but they can feel it. They hear its music and rhythm, and it fills up their senses. There are many writers who are dyslexic. Yes, their teachers could not understand how a person who doesn't read and write well would dream of becoming a writer. And it's true that they may not know how to write well, but the computer does. And there are the proofreaders who correct errors. However, these people who can spell perfectly may lack the necessary imagination to write a novel. Albert Einstein once said that imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited, imagination encircles the world. Dyslexics don't lack imagination at all. In fact, many become artists, sculptors, movie directors, actors, designers, painters, you name it. Thanks to this characteristic of seeing things holistically, they see the forest, the final product, the result, not the process. They cannot memorize anything if they don't understand what it is good for, what you have to do with it, where are you trying to get. In math, it is very probable that they may reach the right answer, but through other neural paths. They can make associations that others cannot see, yet they may stumble across 6 plus 6. Visual spatial abilities. It was noted that dyslexics are very good at seeing things in 3 dimensions or from different perspectives. That makes them excellent engineers and architects. There are many dyslexics among engineers and architects. Another one of their strengths is the interconnectivity. What is the link between a jobless person who is watching TV with a beer in his hand, and an old woman who is walking home with her groceries and gets wet as it is raining. And they both have cell phones. Uber is born. Dyslexics are capable to make connections that may not be obvious firsthand. When you ask a dyslexic child in school what an object resembles, he may give you an answer which you may find completely off or insolent. Because of this great capacity to make connections or to see how pieces fit together in order to form a whole, many become entrepreneurs or scientists. Also, they can quickly come up with a unique solution in an unfamiliar situation. One other strength is the narrative ability. Many dyslexics have great narrative skills, and I don't just mean writer qualities, but the way they build a story around any topic. There are many naturalists and geologists who use this ability to think by using fragments of memory from personal past experiences in their jobs. Some dyslexics make good use of this quality when they want to persuade or to get something. They won't simply tell you that they want a bicycle. They will convince you that it is in your benefit to get them a bike, and they will bring all sorts of arguments to support their ideas. I am very pleased to share this picture with you, as it is my son's star. So Ben Foss, who is an author, activist, and entrepreneur, created a quiz to map the child's strengths. He based it on the abilities that dyslexic people usually exhibit, and he identified the following 8: verbal, social, narrative, spatial, kinesthetic, visual, mathematical, or scientific, musical. So my son scored highest in kinesthetic, social, narrative, and verbal. Those are his strengths. And before I did this quiz, I wasn't even aware that he has strengths. I was only looking at his difficulties. Now I would like to give you some examples of situations in which I saw these strengths in my son. So one episode was in the park. Paul was in grade 1, and he was watching some kids playing a game with an adult supervisor, and he was studying them, and I could see that he wanted to play with them, but he didn't know anyone, and I felt sorry for him. But after about 3 minutes, without telling me a word, I just saw him walk to the adult, and they exchanged words. So before I knew it, the adult stopped the game to introduce a new player, Paul. So I was stunned. I wish I could do that. He knew exactly who he had to talk to. He knew who had the power in that concrete situation. He knew what to do. Another example where I saw this interconnectivity in action was when he was in grade 2 and I was reading a book to him from the Hank Zipzer series, and one of the characters in the book had a pet iguana, and the animal started behaving strangely. Now, Paul immediately, early in the book, he told me that the iguana will have a baby. And I asked him how on earth What makes you say that? And for a moment I thought that in some miraculous way he read the book, but clearly he didn't. He told me that in the illustration on the cover, the animal is drawn big, like it's disproportionate um, from the humans, and then the animals behave strangely. Usually they behave strangely when they're pregnant. And it made me so curious that I had to read towards the end of the book where this information was revealed, just to confirm that indeed the iguana was pregnant. So I didn't make those connections earlier. I would have found out only upon reading it. Another example is from the Mute Art Conservatory this summer, where we went there and we took some photos, and there was a moon exposed, and Paul started getting all sorts of ideas of how to take the pictures. And he is like, make it in such a way that it will seem that I'm holding the moon, and then hold the camera from this angle to make it look like I'm climbing, etc. And of course I had no idea what he was talking about, because I don't have visual spatial qualities, but my husband did, and we think he might be slightly dyslexic too. On this slide you can see some of his Lego creations. He can't make them by following instructions though. He just puts them together using his creativity. Kinesthetic strengths. Well, we see them every day as he's always on the go, being active, and he's good at sports in general. Last year he was also very into dancing, and we thought that he was pretty good too. Unfortunately, he's no longer dancing. He does have some videos from the time, but I don't think he would appreciate it if I share them here. And then the narrative qualities are also very obvious, and we see them on a daily basis. He always negotiates things to get an exchange of the reading and spelling he has to do at home, and he already has a huge collection of Skylanders.